afternoon. Aloha and welcome back to Hawaii is My Mainland here on Think Tech Hawaii. Friday afternoons at 3 from 3 to 3:45 every week. I have a video and blog at kauilucas.com where you can see the past shows, and following up on our live stream, there will be a written blog to give it all to context. Today, as my guest, I have a dear friend, Rene Tillich, PhD, who is probably one of the longest reigning forces in psychotherapy in Hawaii. His practice spans over 40 years just in Hawaii. He isn't originally from Hawaii. He's originally from New York. Or were you born in Germany?
I was born in New York.
Okay.
I was the first kid in the family born in America.
Okay, but you've certainly earned your stripes here on the islands.
By sheer longevity.
Well, I'd like to think that there was a lot of quality involved in that as well as quantity of years.
You're very kind.
And you've done some time in the trenches here, doing things like working with our prison populations and
I
all
have
kinds of
indeed.
things.
Yes. We worked in the prison for many years.
So the name of your practice is the King Kalakaua Center for Humanistic Psychotherapy.
Correct.
That's a mouthful, and in part inspired by you, I did get my my degree in psychology at Chaminade.
Okay.
So I remember learning what humanistic psychotherapy is, but it's not really something that is general knowledge. Can you kind of give us a little context for what is humanistic psychotherapy?
With pleasure. Okay. Humanistic psychotherapy, humanistic psychology was called the third force in psychotherapy. So the first force, once upon a time, a long time ago, there was a man named Freud, and he invented what's called the talking cure. And that got renamed as psychoanalysis, and it's been going on for many, many years. And it still goes on in New York, and we even had some analysts out here. And then the Americans, that was all invented in Vienna and Europe and so on. Then the Americans got into the act, and as one psychotherapist who representative the second force, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, said, yeah, you guys are real good, you deal with people on Park Avenue. I work with pig farmers in Georgia. So he shamed us all. So cognitive behavior therapy is about it began with Pavlov's dogs when they salivated, and you were about to feed them and they salivated, and you made a sound, then they salivated to the sound. And that excited the behaviorists very much because it was a stimulus response deal. So they developed a therapy based on stimulus response, rewards and punishments, and that became the second force. So if you look at Freudian therapy as an exploration of the unconscious, and cognitive behavioral therapy as exploration of behavior, along came the humanists. Perhaps Abraham Maslow is one of the names most associated with them. And they said, human beings are about emotions. That's what really drives us. And so they began to shift the focus from early childhood experience, though still included, and simple rewards and punishments, the behavioral notion, to the notion, if we can get people to know what they're feeling, they can guide their lives more clearly, because the feelings actually are the driving force. And we think we're running our lives with reason, but when you look at all the different points of view, you realize it's much more complicated than that.
It's much more complicated, and so your practice as in humanistic therapy is to get people to be aware of what they're feeling. That's the idea, so that it's not an unconscious force driving us to do crazy things?
Exactly. Well, people can do crazy things even when they know what they're feeling. Humanity is expert at lunacy, so that's why they'll always need shrinks.
Well, yeah, we're not going to devolve into politics, but I mean,
I know your temptations. I know your interests. I'll be docile.
Okay, so the awareness part of it is, so how does that help?
Okay, so what happens is this. Mr. Smith comes in and, we'll make it dramatic. He's been jilted by his girlfriend who he discovers is having an affair. And of course he's in acute pain. She tells him that the reason is it's all his fault, of course, right? And so he's very, very upset, and he's beating himself up, and he's having a terrible time. So what we do is we explore that beating himself up and blaming himself. We may make a little Freudian transition to childhood. Oh, you got blamed for a lot of stuff when you were a kid. Okay, now if you try and understand, well, it feels like she's crazy. It feels like she's just lashing out. Well, what do you think she's feeling? Oh, I don't know. I think she's out to get me. Well, do you think that's what she's feeling? Well, she's acting crazy. Maybe she's hurting too. Oh my goodness. And so on.
Okay. So one of the reasons that I think this is I'm so happy to have you here and talking about this, Rene, is that it seems that there's this way in which we don't talk to each other, and that has huge repercussions in all aspects of our lives, whether it's I can't help it. What can I say?
I'll go political.
No.
Maybe we wouldn't have to massacre each other so we could go to heaven and get 79 virgins if we could talk to each other. But we haven't succeeded yet.
Right, but we have to practice it. So the best place to sort of learn to practice that, or maybe it's not the best place, but a place where it seems to make a lot of sense to practice this kind of aware relating is certainly in the private realm, in the domestic realm. And so your practice at King Kalakaua Center for Humanistic Psychotherapy has sort of specialized in couples therapy.
That's correct. Yeah, and I would agree with you completely that, as I think your title suggested, what's love got to do with it, that notion of love and emotion, because in everything else we have the fantasy that we're rational, but the beauty of love is we know it's irrational. And so that allows people an entree to beginning to talk about their feelings. And when love goes awry, people also kind of suspect it's irrational. It's not a logical thing. You don't want to get into fights with your wife or your lover. But it happens, and it happens with considerable consistency. And so people are willing in that context to say, all right, let me go inside. Let me see what the feelings are that are driving this thing. And often that can be very helpful.
So you have a kind of an interesting method that you use at King Kalakaua Center for couples. Do you want to describe how that's set up?
Okay, so the most blatant part of it is that we do an approach which involves two therapists, one for each partner. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith comes in, and Dr. So-and-so and MSW so-and-so. One will work with Mr. Smith, and one will work with Mrs. Smith. So they will get individual therapy from their therapist, and then all four people will get together and the couples therapy happens. You can alternate between the individual and couples as needed, as the group thinks best, as the therapist thinks best. But what this provides is a great relief for the therapist, I can tell you, having done years of one-on-two couples therapy, and you always feel like you're dancing on the edge of a pin. Okay, now if I take his side or seem to think he said something sensible, she's going to be upset. If I say she said something, he's going to be upset. And I've got to keep this whole thing moving, and yet I want to bring them out. Voila, I'm alone in the room with him. My other therapist alone in the room with her. They can say anything they want to us, and we can empathize, encourage them without worrying about the other partner jumping down his or her throat or our throat. And then when we come into the couple sessions, I can be the bad guy for his client, and he can or she can be the bad guy for my client. So there's a great freedom that this provides for the therapist, and I also strongly believe for the clients.
So do you and the other therapists confer without the clients?
Oh yeah, I mean, we get permission to talk to each other. But one of my favorite techniques in couples therapy is what I call gossip. So I tell the clients who may be sitting out there, and you're my co-therapist, okay, Christiane and I are going to gossip, Cowie and I are going to gossip about you. Now, what do you think about the way Mrs. Smith said that to Mr. Smith? I kind of think her feelings were hurt. What do you think? And so on.
Ah, so you gossip about them in front of them?
In front of them, exactly.
Oh, how interesting.
It's a lot of fun.
So they're fun. So are people, I've never had this experience, so.
They like it because one, they're getting attention. Two, we're kind. No one's ever walked out of my office after we've done gossip. They've walked out of my office for other reasons.
So is the other partner there while you're gossiping when you're gossiping with Mrs. Smith? Mr. Smith is there also?
Yeah, because I can't gossip unless I've got my other therapist there. And my other therapist is only there when both of them are there.
Ah, okay.
Right, see, it's a two-on-two deal.
I see.
But also the whole point of the gossip technique is it's a way of affirming things that maybe he or she will like, and also pointing some stuff out that maybe he or she can learn from.
What would be an example of how that might work? Can you think of one?
Yeah, let me go in. Okay, so one of the things would be, okay, this would be a larger one. My sense, Cowie, is that Mr. and Mrs. Smith right now, they're kind of having a spitting match about, who fed the cat and why. And I think there's something more to it. I think this is something about nurturing each other, but it's easier to pick on the cat.
That's a good one. Okay, yeah, got it. That indirect talking about problems is something that.
So we've waylaid the cat. So we don't need to fight about the cat, hopefully, anymore. We've introduced nurturance, which of course, so we've moved from pet care, which is a nurturing, to spouse care, which is what they're really here for. But of course, it's much easier, and many, maybe all couples find specifics to bitch at each other about, rather than being able to say, I'm hurt because you don't nurture me enough. When a couple gets to the point where they can say that, that's a very positive step, because usually the person hearing that, instead of feeling, oh God, she's picking on me about not feeding the cat again or picking up the litter box, she's talking about she wants my nurturance, she cares, and she's hurt because she feels I don't do it enough. That's a huge shift. So.
And how long does it take to get to that?
This is why psychotherapy has a bad reputation. Every once in a while there's a miracle and you can pull it off in one session. The behaviorists claim they can do it in 6 sessions. Us folks believe you're lucky if you can do it in 6 months to 2 years.
6 months to 2 years. But you're still together for that 6, or maybe not.
That's true.
For
Yeah,
that
no, you're
6
right. So that's a very good point, Joey. Because just coming every other week and sitting in the room together with your spouse, being forced to talk, because they can stay at home and not talk to each other at all except about the cat litter, about real serious things, that in itself is a healing process. And so you're absolutely right. Just the longevity is in itself contributing to them getting better.
Well, let's take a little break and then we'll delve deeper.
Aloha, this is Maria Mera, and I'm here to invite you to my bilingual show, Viva Hawaii on Think Tech Hawaii, every other Monday at 3 p.m. We're here to inform, motivate, and entertain you. Join us. Hola, soy María Mera y estoy aquí para invitaros a mi show bilingüe Viva Hawaii en Think Tech Hawaii cada 2 lunes a las 3 de la tarde. Estamos aquí para informaros, motivaros y entreteneros. Apuntaros.
Hello, I'm Stephen Katz and I'm the host of Shrink Wrap, which comes to you live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on thinktechhawaii.com, and then it's repeated again whenever you want if you go to the website. On our show, we will be talking to all different kinds of therapists, psychologists, psychoanalysts, psychiatrists, people who talk about the mind, the brain, and about different ways to find happiness. I myself am a marriage and family therapist in practice here in Hawaii, and I hope you will join us because I've got a lot to learn, you've got a lot to learn, and it's a great ride. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Welcome back to Hawaii is My Mainland. I'm Kaui Lucas, and with me today is Rene Tillich, PhD, who is one of the founders of King Kalakaua Center for Humanistic Psychotherapy in Hawaii Kai. Rene, so we were talking about the strategy that you've evolved at KKC for couples, where you have 2 therapists, so that each person feels represented, I guess.
Right.
Heard.
Right. Heard.
Yeah.
They got their mafia person next to them.
And you also have a sort of a strategy based on personality types that you use in your couple works. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, but before I do, would you notice that there's a man with a gun over there? What does that make you feel, being a therapist? Okay, so here's what happens. We see the man with the gun. What did you feel?
Fear.
Right, exactly. Okay, now, of course, being a shrink, we can't make it simple, so we're gonna make it complicated. The first thing we gotta do is see the guy with the gun. The next thing we gotta do is anticipate. Now, if we think the guy with the gun is a Halloween prank, which I did once when that happened, no gun, just a knife, the fear dispels. But if we think it's serious, yeah, exactly, fear. So there's perception, there's anticipation or imagination, expectation of what happens, sensation, some kind of adrenaline rush,
Yeah.
thought, oh, I'm scared. Okay, that's the way feelings work. Those 4 components are parts of the whole way we process our emotions and how we respond to. It's a model. Now with all the brain research that's going on, one of the beauties of the brain research is dear old Freud is turning out to be right. Most of the whole bloody brain is underwater, like he said, compared it to an iceberg, 7/8 underwater. And the little brainy part up here, the neocortex that does the thinking, is a cork on an ocean of reflexive brain responses, hippocampus responses, all sorts of reptilian brain responses, that most of the brain is unconscious or providing unconscious information. Okay,
So we have this gunman, and we go through the 4 responses.
Right. So the theory of types is based on those 4 responses, in the sense that different types have different foci of preference. So, for instance, and I'm gonna...
Foci of preference. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
So I've given them sort of lay names here, because when I use the diagnostic names, it just causes great confusion. We have 2 major categories: temperate types and intense types. And then there's 3 intense types: the warrior, the extremist, and the lover. The warrior is an expert at cognition, at the last step, thinking. The warrior is very suspicious and is always psyching out the environment for danger. And the warrior often can be very angry because the world is dangerous. On the other side, we have the extremist, and I'm going to be a little sexist just in interest of time. Many warriors are males. There are a lot of female warriors, though. Many extremists are female, though there are male extremists. But for simplicity's purpose, I'm going to just...
okay, and just to clarify, these are types of intense
characters, personalities.
There's 3
right.
different intense characters. So
Right.
we have the warrior, and you're going to the
extremist who can be absolutely sweet as apple pie and go into a rage 10 minutes later. Drives people crazy because she or he is completely unpredictable, but very charismatic and charming.
Ah.
And then finally the lover, who is very, very sweet until something happens and he or she fall apart and go into an emotion turmoil.
Emotional turmoil.
Oh, it's overwhelming. What am I going to do? Tears. The world is coming to an end.
Okay.
Not aggressive, though.
Okay.
She or he is a sweetie pie.
Okay. But a basket case.
At times.
Right.
In
Okay.
between being totally kind.
Okay.
So one of our couples that we're very proud of, and we call the signature couple, is the warrior and the extremist. Out there in the rest of the world, they walk into an office, and you can imagine what happens. 2 intenses, absolute, powerful, yelling, screaming, passion. Oh, so 10 seconds later, they're making love in the bathroom. Most therapists suggest they get a divorce. We see them and we say, no, we know you well. First of all, who else is going to have you than each other? Because, and second of all, there's an amazing electricity between this. So we encourage them to stay together. And their lives will be more passionate and dramatic than most people's. But when they can get through to seeing that the warrior is actually learning sensations and emotions from the extremist that are a little foreign to him because he's always thinking. And the extremist is learning, oh my gosh, this guy knows how to think, and I could use that at certain times, that kind of way of coding it, and they can help each other out. It actually turns rather nice. Doesn't mean there's no screaming. There
Lots
never
of
will be
screaming,
no
but that's
screaming.
okay.
That's okay, because there's lots of
They
other
just
passion
tolerate.
too, right?
So you teach them to tolerate the screams, and then,
Exactly.
so does it get boring for them to scream at each other when they know that they're just screaming?
Well, yeah, and then they hop into bed, and that's good. And then the cat pees on the carpet, and then we have that argument.
Okay, so we have the extremists, the warriors, and the
Lover.
The lover.
Okay, now we go to the temperate types. And we have the charmer, and we have the prisoner. No, not prisoner, sorry. Precisioner, the prisoner of precision.
Ooh.
And the dreamer. And those guys, so with our intense types, if they get into trouble, there's a lot of noise. With our temperate types, when they have difficulties, what we have to do is, come on, talk to each other. Don't run away. Don't go off into your own world. Stay with each other. And so let's say we get a precisioner who's married to a dreamer. He always wants to make it precise and get the exact details. And she doesn't do details, or vice versa, gender-wise. She likes to dream and imagine possibilities and tell stories. And he wants to know, well, but, is there a way of curing the cat from peeing on the carpet? This is becoming a deep theme, apparently. Now, here's where you get the real drama. Because these guys, temperate, yeah, you help them to talk to each other and you're patient and it gets better.
So so the overall temperament is it's not extreme. It's quiet.
It's
Is that
quiet.
Is it introvert or not that
Well,
far?
that's an interesting question, because I would say in terms of concepts in psychology that most, I've thought about that. Is there a difference between our concept of intense and temperate versus the concept of introvert, extrovert? I would say there's parallel, there's a shared variance. I think ours is a little different, though, because what we're saying is that the intense is not, you can be an intense introvert, i.e. you can be, some of the warriors, they don't particularly like going out socially in the world, but the way they deal with life is with a huge intensity. So some of the more dangerous, well, we won't go there.
All right, well, let's stick with let's finish
Okay.
with the temperate. So we have the dreamer, the precisionist, and
The charmer,
the charmer.
right.
Okay.
Charmers get into marriages with all sorts of people, and where I was going to go next was if they were with a precisioner or a dreamer, the charmer and the dreamer actually can be a pretty good combination because they both are fairly imaginative. They can spin out a little bit. But the couples that we see the most and have the most work with is a temperate, intense mixture. Because when the intemperate, or let's say we get very common one, charmer and a warrior. So a female warrior and a male charmer, probably, I don't know, I'm a bad statistician, but my mind remembers lots of couples like that. And so
what would like a typical she warrior, he charmer, disconnect be? What would
okay,
a
she's an
typical fight-
executive and she takes great care of him. He charms and seduces and takes care of her by making her feel totally feminine and wonderful. And she's going, oh, wow, all these guys are afraid of me because I'm so powerful. But here's this guy, and he's not afraid of me, and it's all wonderful, and yeah, okay, let's
Sounds
go for
great.
it. Sounds great. Unfortunately, Charmer's consistency is not that great. So in about 2 years, and I'll tell you a story from a warrior. Well, so my husband and I were walking down the street together, and suddenly I saw him move over to the side. An attractive woman was coming by. He smiled at her, she smiled at him, and then he came back and walked down the rest of the street with me. I realized more and more that he was doing that. I don't think he was having affairs. He just really liked being charming and seductive. And unfortunately, as he did that, it made me jealous and hurt my feelings. And slowly the charm that he'd been giving to me eroded the marriage. And I got more ill-tempered, he began avoiding me, and that's when we came to King Kalakaua Center. So that's a classic
Okay.
story.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, why don't we just take a little break right now and come back and get into the next?
Aloha, namaskar, and hello. My name is Anu Hittel, and I host the show called Climate Change Beyond Outrage. We go beyond outrage to find solutions to climate problems facing people, nations, and the world. I hope you will join me here every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We broadcast live from thinktechhawaii.com. Aloha and bye-bye.
Aloha, my name is Carl Campagna. I am the host of Think Tech Hawaii's Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers. You can see our show every Wednesday at noon at 12 p.m. on thinktechhawaii.com, as well as visiting YouTube and finding the link for the show there. The show is also aired on OC16. We look forward to seeing you on the show. We have many wonderful guests, including Joan Husted, Corey Rosenlee, where we talk about the very important issues of education for our keiki. We look forward to seeing you there. Mahalo.
That was
Here
good.
we are, back with Rene Tillich on Hawaii is My Mainland. I'm Kaui Lucas, and you can find our follow-up blog with the Rene's information at kauilucas.com tomorrow sometime. Okay, Rene, let's talk about some of the biggies that couples face. Infidelity, empty nests, aging. These are some of the pitfalls of marriages that have survived the first few years, but
Let me just say that aging is a problem common to all humanity, not just couples. but
only the
okay.
lucky ones.
Only the lucky ones, that's a good point. Okay, infidelity, that's always a hot subject. Infidelity happens quite frequently, as the statistics show. And the people who come to see us because of infidelity, now, you know, there's chronically unfaithful people, there's people who break up and that's that. But the people who come to see us around somebody who had an affair, they're people who would like to make it work. And basically the pattern goes something like this, that the unfaithful person is remorseful and wants to save the marriage. The betrayed person is very angry and hurt, but wants to save the marriage. And so there's a period of time there where the wounded, hurt person is scolding the other person, the betrayer, and that just has to go on for a while. Though there's an interesting thing. After an infidelity, if the couple stays together, the image I've used is they walk into the room, they see one or the other partner in bed with somebody. They walk out of the room and never come back, or they go to the next bedroom and jump in bed with each other. For couples who survive, infidelity can be a stimulus. And after an infidelity is discovered, the sexual passion can increase, whether that's competitiveness or what. So one couple I love to tell about is the couple where both of them had an affair, both of them discovered that the other one had an affair, and as their form of foreplay for about a year after that, they would tell each other details of the infidelity. They would both have orgasm. They would then look at each other. How could you have done that?
Well, that's certainly making a positive of the negative, but I can imagine if that's sort of an odd way to keep passion in a marriage on the long term.
Yes, it's probably impractical. The open marriage, because when I was younger in the 60s, open marriage was a popular thing. Didn't work that well, though now they have the polyamory. So every generation tries it.
And what's your theory on that?
And why it doesn't work that well? Because, well, the way one person who practiced open marriage said, if you do open marriage, it gets to be a domino effect. Everybody is connecting with everybody. You have to not fall in love. If someone in the system falls in love with somebody that they're having that they're having an affair with, all the dominoes come roaring down. And since, back to the title of your show, since love has a lot to do with it, and human beings seem to have a desire to fall in love. They like that state. It's a happy state until it isn't. But so what happens there is that
There's a period where the betrayed one is beating up on the...
Right, there we go. Thank you for bringing me back. But eventually what they've got to do, and they both have to face this, what were the conditions in the marriage that led to the affair? And they both have to look at it and talk about, okay, we weren't talking to each other. We were talking about the cat again. We needed to talk to each other and we weren't, and we've got to do that. And then they start talking about what really is bugging them. And there's all sorts of stuff that can come up. If they can get through that and get the habit of talking. I had one couple the other day where the husband said, we just spent 2.5 hours talking to each other and it was fun. I cheered. They were on their way.
So in your experience, it is possible after that kind of a betrayal for a marriage to heal and in the long term survive without repeat offenses?
All of the above is true. Can I say with confidence that there won't be repeat offenses? I've seen it where there have not been repeat offenses. I wouldn't want to say that we can guarantee that, but yes, I think it's possible.
And something a lot of my contemporaries are dealing with now is the empty nest, the scary empty nest. It's kind of like the cat, except it's not the cat, it's the kids, right?
It's the kids, right, absolutely. So you fall in love, rosy glow, it's all wonderful. Then you have a child, boom, suddenly the mother is completely exhausted. The father is either jealous or overworked, helping the mother take care of the child. Sex goes down, focus goes on the children, and for many couples that's enough. They will focus on the children, not miss the relationship with each other so much. Other couples, they do miss the relationship. Anyway, eventually the kids grow up and go off out to school or into the world. And now the couple has to face each other. Do we have enough stuff left for each other to spend the rest of our lives together without benefit of children? There'll be grandchildren, which will help the whole thing along. But they have to make that decision. Many, many couples can do it. They need to learn to talk to each other again. They need to learn to have fun. They need to learn travel. Some people use that as a bond. But they have to find a way of reconnecting, because the way they connected much of the time was through the children. Some couples actually keep the grown-up relationship going throughout the whole period, but many don't, and so that becomes then a big, big issue. But if they're willing to talk about it and explore it, it can work.
Do you have, I don't know, specific things to do to get couples reintroduce them to the idea of talking to each other on that very real level?
Oh, I'll give you an exercise that we give to a lot of couples, but it's kind of perfect for couples who have not done this for a while. Obviously, you get them dating. One of the techniques we have at King Kalakaua Center is what we call controlled dating. In controlled dating, Mrs. Smith controls the first date, and Mr. Smith has to go along cheerfully and happily with whatever she wants. No gunplay, but you know. Second date, Mr. Smith is completely in charge, and Mrs. Smith goes along. Third date, Mrs. Smith is in charge again, but now she's going to create a date to make Mr. Smith happy. And fourth date, Mr. Smith is in charge, creating a date to make Mrs. Smith happy. That exercise addresses two of the big deals in couples relationship, and certainly in integrating after the children are gone: power and concern for the other, paying attention. So we say, date A, one's in charge, has the power, and B gives the power. Date B, reverse that. So you learn about power sharing, or you explore it. And then in the second set of dates, where there's empathy for the other person, you're creating a gift, a kindness, showing that, working on that. If it works, it really is helpful. Sometimes they come to therapy from those dates. Oh my gosh, it was awful. There's work to be done.
Okay, so in our last minute or so here, what sort of advice would you give to singles looking for an appropriate partner, something that'll really work, something that'll last?
I would give absolutely no advice, because that process is completely emotional. The only advice I would give, get out there and meet people, because you can't find someone if you don't meet them. But the way lightning strikes, you know, should you do this kind of person or that kind of person, or social class or so on? Nope. Oh, okay, well, but even there, you're going to fall in love with who you fall in love with. Probably the temperate, you'll do better with a temperate. Intense, you'll do better with an intense. But the power of love transcends anything us therapists can do.
Oh, that's absolutely gorgeous. Thank you, Rene. I really enjoyed this.
My pleasure.
You can find this at hawaiilucas.com. We will have our interview and follow up with information.